let's get into it with tonight's party panel. Host of the Jason Rantz Show on KTTH Seattle. It is Jason Rantz, radio host, Democrat strategist, and Fox News contributor, the glorious Leslie Marshall, and Based Politics co-founder. There he is, Beagle lover, Brad Palumbo. Welcome, everyone. Jason, I will start with you. I think the president is, I don't think he's too old. I know a lot of super, super hot, spry, lithe and lean 80-year-olds who are naughty, naughty babies. He is not one of them.
He's not, and that's the thing. If the question is, are you too old for whatever? You're too old for whatever it is we're talking about. When that becomes the main focus, obviously it's of concern, because you can look at Donald Trump and say he's about the same age, and guess what? No one's really having that conversation about him because he doesn't come off as a 113-year-old. And I think that's really what it's all about. It's perception. And when you're at this point, that's where Kamala Harris and whomever the Republican nominee chooses to go with as a vice president, that's going to come in a really big way. And I think for the first time in a very long time, we're really going to be showing that kind of focus on the vice presidential pick, because I don't think anyone wants Kamala Harris, and no one thinks realistically Joe Biden's going to make it that long. What do you think, Leslie? Will Joe Biden make it that long, and would you want a President Harris? I answer honestly, it's okay, you're among friends.
Well, a few things, man. I don't want to be around for karma when you're all old, because I'm not going to say anybody's too old. I once interviewed Michael Dukakis when he was 89 years old.
I think he's a mushmouth. Go ahead, sorry.
When I interviewed Michael Dukakis, he was 89 years old. This is a few years ago. He was teaching at Northeastern University and UCLA, by close to the same time. He was so with it, I thought I had dementia. And this was like 5-10 years ago. Look. I have seen, when I worked in my husband's medical office, different ages. Genetics play a huge part. Lifestyle plays a huge part. You've got some luck thrown in there as well. I know, but Joe Biden's mother had her brain up until the very end at 92. It was a hip and an infection that led to her death. And he is with it. I mean, I've met him. I've interviewed him.
I've met him.
I don't see and hear what you guys do. And obviously America doesn't either, because he's our president.
Yeah, he's our president because everyone hated Donald Trump. Brad, I don't buy this.
And that's going to happen again.
I mean, Trump has just as good a shot now because Biden has a record and it's not great. Trump had a better record economically before the pandemic. Trump also has a ton of deficits. I don't think anyone in the country wants to be subjected to that matchup. Democrats will probably throw millions and millions of dollars behind the Trump campaign because they think that he is the guy to beat. Is that the way to do politics in this country, Brad?
I hope not. But look, to me, it's so telling that President Biden announced his reelection with a video message, not a speech, not a press conference, a pre-edited video message. It's almost like they don't want him subjected to scrutiny, or they don't want people to really see, is he really with it? Because we know he's not. Why are they not going to have debates, even though new polling has RFK Jr. up to 19% before any of this has really even got going? But the DNC is not going to have debates because they want to shield him. You know, he actually did okay in some of the debates in 2020, but if he's still completely up to it, why not do it again? Why not reassure the public? And the public needs reassuring. Even a majority of Democrats, according to an NBC poll,
53%
don't
of them
think he should run again.
The 53% of Biden voters, not just Democrats, Biden voters don't want him to run again. That's saying something. That something is, don't run. All right, party panel is going to stay right here. Much more for them coming up. Oh, Lord Fauci may be out of a job, but it seems he just can't quit the limelight. The diminutive doctor this week trying to deny his role in the pandemic lockdowns, he promoted, saying, quote, show me a school that I shut down and show me a factory that I shut down. Never. I never did. I gave a public health recommendation that echoed the CDC's recommendation, and people made a decision based on that. But former CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield says everyone knows there were mistakes made. Very good interview today, and that's how you do it. That's how you take responsibility with some humility and self-reflection. So why is Fauci completely incapable of admitting any faults? The party panel is back. Jason Rantz, Leslie Marshall, and Brad Palumbo. It's insulting because, you know, on one hand, you know, the revisionist hand, he's looking back going, I never shut down schools. On the other hand, he's going, I am science. So which is it? Jason, sorry. You.
Oh, there we go. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I will say this. I'm a little offended that people are going after Anthony Fauci because, remember, he did not ask for this. He was called by God to step up and really help navigate this country and the world and science. This is not someone who was on the cover of magazines and doing documentaries and making it all about him. This is someone who was in a lab somewhere, personally going through this little virus and trying to figure it all out and save us all. So how dare you? How dare you, Kennedy?
Yeah, because he's also the one who has been obfuscating about the lab leak theory, not taking an honest look at it. So
that's true.
Leslie, he's been dishonest about pretty much everything. And not only did he call for lockdowns, not only did he call for mask mandates and arbitrary 6-foot rules, he wanted to go further. Leslie Marshall.
No, that is actually true. For him, you know, for him to say, look, did he close the schools? No. But he also wasn't alone in this. There was a letter that was sent not only to the government, it was put out there all throughout social media by hundreds of scientists who said immediate action on the part of national, state, municipal, and local governments, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line, they said to enforce social distancing measures, including closing or severely limiting all non-essential businesses
was that,
and
Leslie?
closing schools.
Mm-hmm. What month was that?
Well, this was in the beginning of the pandemic, and one of the things healthcare, including Dr. Fauci, they were dealing with a virus that was new, and they were working as they go along. Hindsight's always 20/20. As a parent, I think it harmed my children to be in lockdown. But at the time when the school said pick your kids up, and you're scared, you're believing all of the doctors, you're believing the science, and they were going one day at a time because this was a very new virus. It also was entering the body not only differently but reacting very differently once in the body than any other SARS virus that they had dealt with in the past.
That was the point that Robert Redfield made this morning on America's Newsroom. He was saying we were going with what we had. What they had in February of 2020, very different than what they had in September of 2020. And there were states and there were countries that said, we are not going to lock down. That is counterproductive and harmful. So, you know, I look at this guy. I don't trust a word that he says. I don't trust his motivation. And frankly, Brad, I wouldn't be surprised if he made a bunch of money off of the mRNA vaccines that he helped develop over the decades.
Look, nothing about Fauci can surprise me at this point, really, because just the ego on display here. Find somebody who loves you as much as Dr. Fauci loves Dr. Fauci. I mean, to actually claim with a straight face that he had nothing to do with lockdowns and school closures. I didn't close any schools. Technically true, the governors and the local governments did, but you strongly recommended it, Dr. Fauci. And in fact,
with de Blasio here in New York to close my daughter's schools.
Explicitly criticized Governors Kemp in Georgia and Governor DeSantis in Florida when they reopened, publicly criticized them. So Dr. Fauci absolutely bears some blame here, but I don't think I'll be holding up my breath waiting for him to have any genuine moment of self-reflection.
No, he's incapable of it because for him, it is all about CYA. You know, from the behavior and the recommendations that he dictated. He didn't just recommend, he was a dictator during the lockdown, and all of the research that went into trying to figure out how these viruses evolve. Oddly enough, it was gain-of-function research that was laundered through his agency and given to the Wuhan lab in China. Now, meanwhile, let's shoot from a different direction. The NRA now suing Washington Democrat Governor Jay Inslee over what is being called a blatantly unconstitutional gun ban. Inslee this week signed 3 controversial gun bills banning the purchase of more than 50 types of semi-automatic rifles, imposing a 10-day waiting period on purchasing firearms, and clearing the way for lawsuits against gun manufacturers and sellers in the event their products are used in certain crimes. Is there any chance these laws will hold up in court? Now, Jason, I'm glad you're here because you do a wonderful talk radio show in Seattle. Washington State is not Seattle. Seattle is not indicative of most of the people who live in Washington State. The rest of the people outside Seattle, they're fun, they're outdoorsy, they're recreational, they believe in the Constitution, they want to defend themselves and their families, and they are the people who own AR-15s, the most popular sport rifle in the country by far.
Yeah, the problem is, though, that the Seattle-style lawmaker and activists, they're in charge all across Western Washington, and so they've got this block of votes. What's curious here is they talk about they're doing this because they want to save kids from being shot in schools. They're doing this to save lives. We don't have that problem in Washington State. And when you go up and you look at the list of weapons that are banned now, they're not being used in crimes here. I spoke with a lot of sheriffs over the course of the last couple of weeks, just saying, hey, give me a general idea of what kind of guns are being used. Handguns are being used, and they're being used by criminals that this Democrat Party are releasing early from prison and fighting to keep out of prison. So they are causing this issue. At the end of the day, this is not going to hold up. The Bruin decision was very clear. You can't just go after really popular guns. That doesn't jibe with the Second Amendment.
No, and they really don't tackle the problem of murderous rage and hate, Leslie, which I think is the thing that's at the root of these mass killings. It's not necessarily the guns. And banning guns, prohibition, doesn't matter if it's immigration or drugs, it doesn't work.
But some things do. Universal background checks, red flag laws, not necessarily work, but can help to reduce the problem. And I think we'd all agree if you save one life, especially the life of a child, I'm all in. Look, 9 states, including the one that I'm sitting in California right now, actually prohibit the transfer, the sale, and the manufacturing of these assault weapons. So I don't know how come the NRA seems to be really angry at Washington State, because there's 9 other states doing it right now, and nobody's in a courtroom screaming that their constitutional, Second Amendment constitutional rights are being taken away here in California as well.
Are these laws going to hold, Brad?
No, and people are in court, actually. It just takes years to work through the legal system. But the entire premise here is absurd, that banning assault weapons will make the state of Washington safer. It's literally a made-up term, a made-up category of guns that's based just on how scary they look. Some of the most deadly mass shootings in American history have been done with handguns. The casualty count is actually not going to be any different when these tragedies do occur. I mean, nationwide, you look at FBI data, only about 300 people are killed with rifles of any kind, let alone assault rifles in the U.S. How many of those are in Washington State? You can probably count them on one hand. You're not actually making anyone safer by banning these guns. There's millions of them in this country. 99.99% of them are never used to kill anybody. It's a political exercise that violates people's rights but doesn't make anyone safer.
All right, we have about 15 seconds. So, Jason, what are some of your listeners saying about this?
They're outraged and they're wondering what they can do. Unfortunately, in this case, in the short term, there's nothing unless an injunction is put in place, because this was signed as an emergency bill, which means it is now in effect the second the ink dried.
All right, I'll slap an injunction on them so fast it'll make their head spin. Party panel, thank you so much. Always good to talk to all of you. Jason, Leslie, and Brad, thank you.